Good afternoon. I would like to call the meeting of the Johnson County Community College Board of Trustees to order for November 2017. Please help me start the meeting with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we start, I want to thank Ms. Sharp for chairing the meeting last month in my absence. The next item is the roll call and recognition of visitors. Ms. Schlicht.
This evening's visitors include Dick Carter, Paul Snyder, Angelina Lawson, and Roberta Eveslage.
I think it might be appropriate for Paul and Angelina to stand, and we can welcome them. They will be joining the board as elected members in January. As will Mr. Cook and Trustee Cross, but we don't have a clap for incumbents. Oh, yes, we will. The next item on the agenda is our open forum system, or segment of the program. The open forum section is a time for members of the community to address the board. There will be one open forum period during each regularly scheduled board meeting. Comments are limited to 5 minutes. There are a number of speakers. The chair may limit them to less than 5 minutes. In order to be recognized, and a speaker must be registered at the door before each board meeting and prior to the open forum agenda item. When addressing the board, speakers are requested to remain at the podium, should be respectful, and are encouraged to address individual personnel or student matters directly with the appropriate college department. As a practice, the college does not respond in this setting when matters concern personnel or student issues or matters that are being addressed through our established grievance processes or are otherwise the subject of review by the board. We have one person signed this evening, Chris Russell. Chris, Roland Park, come onto the podium, and you are also a candidate for trustee. Thank you for putting your name on the ballot and running a campaign.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. President, members of the administration, members of the faculty, members of the community, students. My name's Chris Roselle. I want to congratulate trustees Cook and Cross and newly elected trustees Lawson and Snyder on a race well run. I have a few concerns that I will not be able to address as a trustee, so I'm going to start addressing them. One of them is I was looking at the strategic plan for the college, and I couldn't tell a lot of things about how the strategic plan was done, and maybe there's a more fully published strategic plan that actually says who wrote it and how it was done. I read about the meetings, and they sounded great. I've used the Future Search Conference methodology, which is a whole systems planning methodology that I'd like to recommend to the college to consider. Additionally, and with the Future Search, one would typically invite students, faculty, staff, business, civic, deaf community, Hispanic community, etc., to participate in the planning. And you would sit through several days, a total of 16 hours, and reach common ground as to what needed to be done for the long term for the college. As a student, I've taken courses in many different departments and observed a number of some of the best teachers I've ever studied with. I've also found some teachers that did not say what their next lesson would be, did not have clearly assigned readings, did not have clearly assigned assignments, and I filled out the evaluations, of course, but I think that if the college supported the best practices of its excellent teachers and standardized that and encouraged it across all teachers, that we would all benefit. I love taking fantastic courses, and I don't love some other courses. Additionally, every semester, we students do a course evaluation, usually. And it asks a lot of questions, and we give a lot of feedback to the professors and the department, and I don't know whom. But once we fill out the questionnaire, we never hear, see, or benefit from our input. When I studied evaluation theory, what I studied was that if you don't give the evaluation results back to the people who input the information, that after a while the people start trashing the information. It's irrelevant to them, so they don't input good information. I think that that would be another significant step, and other colleges and universities, some other colleges, not every, do share evaluation results, so that rather than finding out about teachers and courses on Rate My Professor that people who have failed in the course and people who have dropped out of the course go to, we can learn from the best practices or the students who have completed the course and what they found to be excellent about the course. Another little thing is the courses have excellent course objectives, and sometimes they're what's tested over, and sometimes the course objectives are not what's tested over. And I tend to focus on objectives. I don't know about other students. But when I have a course that's clear and has clear objectives, and I prepare for the objectives, and then my test is something else, I don't think it's really appropriate. That's all the time I have tonight, so I'll have to complete it on another day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. I would mention that as far as the strategic plan, we may not have used the future search systems method, but we did have multiple community meetings with, I think, a total of more than 100 community volunteers, plus a large effort on campus that probably most people in this room were involved in. But we can always find better ways to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is awards and recognition. President Sopcich.
We have no awards or recognitions tonight.
Student Senate report. Mr. Rowe? You want to be here tonight?
Be seated this time to Mr. Carter.
Oh, no, we don't do that. We still limit Dick to 3 minutes. College Lobbyist report. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report continues to start with good news. It's a nice way to start reports after a series of months of not being able to do so. The revenues coming into the state look good enough that when the consensus revenue estimating group that meets twice a year got together earlier in November, they revised up the figures, the revenue estimates for the remainder of the current fiscal year, which is 2018 that we're in now, and 2019 to the tune of about $229 million, about $108 million for the remainder of this year, and $121 million for next year. Keep in mind that that group is made up of economists from K-State, KU, Wichita State University, the Director of Legislative Research, the Revenue Secretary, and the Budget Director. And they get together again a couple times a year to look at policy that has been passed, to look at the realized revenues of the state, and then to make decisions on where they think the state's economy is going into the future. The Budget Director indicates that the economy still looks flat. There's a lot of unknowns out there with respect to the anticipated money from LLCs and S-Corps, the pass-through money. And again, that is part of the policy that was changed in May. as well as it would appear that presently the ag economy sectors are at all-time lows. And so again, Kansas being an ag state, where a good portion of the revenue comes from, again, many of those folks are also LLCs or S-corps. There's a lot of unknowns that we're waiting to see how the budget comes in come April of 2018. I think the trends seem to be upward. We've had 4 months now of positive receipts that have beat the expectations. Keep in mind, though, that those expectations were based on old policy, and I think that's one of the reasons why that group revised up their estimates. The Legislative Budget Committee, which is one that I follow very closely during the interim process, met also recently on the 8th, and they heard initial agency requests for the fiscal 2019 year, and that's the budget year that we'll be debating when the legislature comes back in January. Those numbers total to about a new number of, new dollars of about $335 million. It's not one of those situations, I think, necessarily where folks say, hey, we've got new money flowing into the state's coffers. Let's see what we can do to spend more than we're taking in. I think a lot of the agencies are trying to play catch up from years of understaffed agencies, budgets that have been drained all around. Of that $335 million, about $23.9 million is part of the Board of Regents' request to just restore the cuts. Those aren't necessarily new dollars. That's just restoring the cuts that were made in 2017. Meanwhile, the Legislative Coordinating Council, and I talked a little bit about this last month and was unsure of just exactly what would happen. The Legislative Coordinating Council did, in fact, approve a K-12 funding committee. In fact, they're calling it something very interesting. The name they've given it is the Special Committee on Comprehensive Response to School Finance Decision. Never really seen a committee named that before, but we've also probably not been in these waters either. That group will meet, that committee will meet a total of 3 days, and some of the other additional happenings that occurred in an extended LCC meeting, Legislative Coordinating Council meeting. That is a group of the legislative leaders that make up House and Senate on both sides of the aisle. Approved up to $100,000 to hire an attorney or legal counsel for the Senate, $100,000 to hire legal counsel for the House to guide them on school finance, and then up to $200,000 to hire a special consultant to give them some input on school finance formula, and maybe to even look at the decade-old school funding formula study that was last run. And so we've got about $400,000 that we're spending to give some advice, and that's kind of where things are headed as we move into the 2018 legislative session. This month in Wichita, the Board of Regents met on campus at Wichita State University, and as I mentioned last month, they were to look at the non-budgetary legislative initiative items. And I've listed those 3 items. Those are the 3 known items that they had at their first reading. The first 2 probably don't really matter to us a whole lot, but the third one certainly could have some impact, and that's unification of the statutes related to performance-based budgeting and performance agreements. The Board of Regents, when they when all of higher education came under the Board of Regents in 2000 under Senate Bill 345, one of those long-term goals was to establish performance agreements. That has been a long-standing practice of the Board of Regents. They don't necessarily marry up with the way that the state statute that passed in 2016 does related to performance-based budgets. So there's a little bit of a conflict there, which requires some extra steps on the higher education level. And I don't know that the Pew Research study that was used to develop the model legislation in 2016 for the state didn't take into account higher education institutions. So there is a bill that the Board of Regents is proposing that would allow the Board of Regents to continue operating under the performance agreement model that they've established as far as the way new dollars are divided up amongst the higher education institutions. I did attach to the legislative report the draft language that the Board of Regents intends to use for that bill introduction, and we'll see where things go there. There are some upcoming interim hearings that I'll be sitting in on that have some applicability, some direct, some periphery to higher education, specifically Johnson County Community College. But the first one of probably the most importance is the CAPERS Committee. And they'll be reviewing legislation that passed and talking about working after retirement issues and how those laws have been implemented and if there's needed changes. The Budget Committee will be meeting once more in December, although that date has not been established yet. And then we'll be sitting in listening to what the school finance decision, the Comprehensive Decision Committee plans to put forward as they make some recommendations to the legislature. Finally, there's some other important dates listed there. The beginning of the legislative session on January 8th, Higher Education Day on January 18th. We're meeting and working on that collectively as a group of folks in Topeka. We'll be meeting on campus about what we are contributing to that event here in the coming weeks. Then the final thing that I wanted to talk about that is not on the printed report that I passed out, but I did lay a document at your desk, and that is the Johnson County Community College Statements of Principle that were developed last year. Last month I mentioned to you that the Government Affairs Task Force met, and that group reviewed the Statements of Principle. We talked about what adding a couple might look like, determined that they were covered under current Statements of Principle. But because we're going to be meeting with the Johnson County delegation at the beginning of December, wanted you to have the opportunity to take a look at that again. And so there are no changes that have been recommended to the Statements of Principle. And again, they were written in a manner that we could use the document to help cover a number of issues that come before us at the state legislature. And so, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I would stop there and see if there are any questions.
Trustee Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carter, a couple of things. So, regarding the Revenue Consensus Group making their adjustments, in the past few years, we've had examples, more than one, where they have downsized the expectations because the revenue just wasn't going to be there. And so when I look at the report and see that ag is expected to be at its lowest, well, it's going to be low this year, along with dropping oil prices, and the budget director saying it's flat, my assumption on the consensus is that's a result of the tax increase that was made. Is that correct?
I think that's a very fair assumption.
And because it doesn't seem there's any other evidence that would create optimism by the revenue estimating group, considering those other factors. Is the Kansas Supreme Court price still between 500 and 700 million?
That's what is being discussed. The court was very careful not to give a price tag, but all of those involved in the conversation seem to think that $600 million figure is the target. Okay.
Thirdly, so the $400,000 that is being approved for both the House and the Senate in this interim committee, is that, could one perceive that intent to challenge the Supreme Court ruling?
I certainly.
In fact, what we've done for the last 10 years is adequate? Is that how I could read that?
I think you could read it that way.
And then I guess a comment, Mr. Chair. When we look at the performance agreements and how schools can get performance-based funding, it's my frustration with the system. Because as I read the language, it says we're going to review performance based on academic year 2015 for additional funding that comes through for 2017-18. And I get frustrated when we have to rely on such dated data for new revenues. Just a comment. Thank you.
I don't think you have to worry about performance-based funding, which would reward us with new money, because there is no new money. And so they've been doing this for years, since 1999. That's 20 years, and we're pretty much where we were 20 years ago with regards to performance-based funding. A lot of states, as you probably know, over 20 have pretty stringent performance-based funding systems in place. But we're hanging tight with what was talked about in 1999. True?
Yes, that's accurate.
I'm not being critical of anybody, it's just that it seems like it takes us a long time to shift the aircraft carrier.
Dick, what about committee chairs? Have any Johnson County of the delegation, were they appointed to committee chairs?
Yeah, we're represented very well in the area of leadership in the legislature. For example, Senator Denning is the majority leader, who pretty much controls the direction that the Senate goes in cooperation with the Senate President, but he sets the agenda. Our own Senator, Molly Baumgardner, is chair of the Senate Education Committee. And of course, we have Representative Reichman and Representative Schwab, both in House leadership. And then we have other folks in either vice chair positions or sitting on education committees that may or may not have a direct application to the college. But we have folks in leadership throughout the legislative body.
Dick, what's the power of a chair? What can they do?
Well, they set the agenda of a committee. They make the determination on what is heard, what isn't heard, what bill moves forward. And so they're allowed to, in concert with their respective leadership, set the tone or set the agenda for their committee.
Trustee Cross?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Carter, and I guess I'd ask President Sopcich, he's addressed this a number of times. I think this is an important point, buried, as lawyers are taught to do, two-thirds, three-quarters of the way through. Support the continuation and enforcement of designated geographic community college service areas to meet the educational needs of the state in an efficient manner for taxpayers. I feel the need to remind folks why that's, what that is and why it's important, if I may ask Mr. Carter and Dr. Sopcich.
Yeah, sure, certainly. That's getting. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'll take my initial stab, and I know that you'll likely have comments, Dr. Sopcich. There have been efforts afoot in the past to redirect dollars, either from a designated taxing area or to establish a statewide mill levy. And so specifically, there are applications there. From an academic perspective, there are all kinds of different agreements that are in place, and some of those can play into service area conversations. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, historically, there were service areas throughout the state, and schools had to respect those with regards to pursuing students, and that's just how it was. Then the internet came along. And so now what you have is there are really, as far as technology goes, and I always said, my daughter took a class from Barton County. I mean, so those service areas don't really exist in that way, but I can tell you, with regards to a physical presence in other counties, that's a very viable option for a lot of schools who are living in communities where they don't have any people, right? So guess where they want to come? So there you go. Now, once you start doing that, then the next argument is, well, it's just one statewide system, so therefore we need a statewide mill levy to support the statewide system. And so one thing will lead to another. We've staunchly opposed this, and quite frankly have stood up against almost all the other community colleges who are very supportive of the elimination of service areas. KBOR is very supportive of the service areas as well.
They are supported?
Absolutely.
Of maintaining the
Maintaining,
service
yeah.
areas.
Thank you.
Service areas are geographic areas.
Exactly.
Such as a county or more that you would be allowed to have a physical presence.
True.
And so we have had, excuse me, Mr. Chair, we have had colleges that go unnamed that want access and permission to come into Johnson, either remotely or through electronic means.
Well, there's also a process. So let's say Barton, which specializes in a lot of military training because of their proximity to Fort Riley, right? So they have a lot of these military type courses. We will receive requests that goes through the Board of Regents that they want to offer this class in Johnson County. Well, Mickey, Karen will review this to see if we have any, if there's any rationale as to why we have to, how we can turn it down. In a lot of cases, there isn't. We're not doing it. And so they can come in and they can go to Edgerton down there and offer some types of these courses. So we just approved one from, which one? It was Fort Scott.
Fort Scott for a program in water maintenance.
You know, water, sewage, or
Yeah, wastewater. management.
wastewater. And these are rather obscure programs, but it does give them, it gets them to the point where they're offering classes in Johnson County in a way. But that's within the system, and that's fine, because they have to get our approval in order to do that. We have also rejected requests when we feel that's in conflict with what we're already doing. Karen is always, because we also do some of this stuff in continuing ed, and so why would we let somebody come up here and offer the same thing? This is what's going on across the state. You know, you have Wichita State up here now offering in-state tuition in Missouri, Kansas City. It's a real dogfight out there for enrollment and head count.
Trustee Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was gonna wait until the KACCT report to make this question, but the segue is already there for me, so I'm gonna go for it. There was a tweet that I saw that the Wichita Area Technical College, WATSE, was so proud to be changing their colors to yellow and black because they're now under the Wichita State banner.
That's right.
Can you talk about, so does WATSE get to recruit, they don't have service areas anymore, that they don't, do they get to just use, can you help me understand how that was? Jerry wants to say something, Trustee Cook wants to say something. I'm just curious, that's okay now.
It was a great opportunity for WATSE
Yeah.
and Wichita State. And so, on one hand, WATSE was assumed, now they're like a subsidiary of Wichita State, but it certainly increases Wichita State's head count, which was probably a pretty good motivation for that. Nikki, you got anything to add on?
Yeah. This was not one that I was particularly in favor of. It effectively creates a situation where legally you've got a community college that functions under the banner of community colleges, including community college funding. But the president of that community college is actually now cross-listed as vice president of applied sciences for WSU. And so WSU now can take students in who do not meet WSU qualifications to actually become a shocker, but they cannot put them into their program. They can send them for a degree at their School of Applied Sciences, which is a community college, and therefore has no entry requirements. So it allows you to keep your Carnegie designation as a moderately selective university while actually having a way to recruit people who can't qualify to go to your school and saying, hey, but you can just go over here and take your classes. That's still part of us. And you can still live in the dorm and pay us for that. And so it is a unique situation.
Yeah, I would like to add, and this was published by the Wichita State Student Newspaper. I believe WSU spent $2 million on enrollment consultants, and that got them an additional 200 students. So high price per student to grow that enrollment.
So do their boundaries disappear then?
According to the deal that was struck with the Board of Regents, WATSE does not have, they don't disappear, but WATSE was never under the same constraints as everybody else because they are a technical college, not a community college.
All right, and technical
So
colleges.
they've never been under the same rules that we are in any case.
And WATSE collects statewide funding to the tune of $2 to every one a community college would get.
Who would have thought higher education was so complicated? Trustee Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Only responding because Trustee Sharp thought I might be willing to. This really, this discussion is not a new discussion, as a matter of fact. And when the new president came to Wichita State University, WSU, we like to use acronyms, thank you. And WATSE is the Wichita Area Technical School Institute, I guess. He had made the pledge that, as you indicated, Dr. Sopcich, that we're going to grow enrollment by several students, several thousand students, as a matter of fact. And so when they spent all this money and ended up with 200 rather than 12,000, I think he was under the gun a little bit. KACCT was very concerned about this at least 2 years ago. And Butler Community College was one that was going to suffer consequences, as well as Cowley, as well as, I guess, any community college within a reasonable distance of Wichita. Because not only did this send the message that students from the Wichita Area Technical School Institute, Trustee Lindstrom, that would also open the door for other students that potentially would go to these other community colleges. And so it's, again, back to Trustee Cross's question about the significance of geographic areas. We seem to think they're important as long as they benefit us, and not so important when they don't benefit us, whomever us are. Little history here and ongoing competition for the student.
And ultimately, the goal of service areas is to avoid duplicative services paid for by tax dollars, which is why we support keeping the service areas, so we don't have 5 community colleges doing the same thing in Johnson County at the taxpayer expense, fighting over the same students. And we want our taxpayers to have a stake in Johnson County Community College and not be dispersed throughout the state of Kansas. And we think that's good for the other community colleges in the state. Sometimes they don't agree with us. Anything else, Mr. Carter?
No, sir.
Did you need us for any of that last discussion as we just go around up here?
I'm going to encourage Mr. Rowe to be here to present his report next time,
Okay.
so as not to cede time.
Thank you, Dick. Appreciate your work in Topeka on our behalf. The next item on the agenda is the Audit Committee report. The Audit Committee met on November 9th. Vice Chair Sharp and I attended. We'll get to the recommendations for action later, but we, as always, looked at our keeping our people safe and our behavioral intervention team, statistics about reports that had been done on students or others on campus who might be in need of additional assistance. We reviewed the ethics point reports. Ethics points is the confidential ability to report things that you see on campus that you believe may involve harassment or discrimination or misuse of college assets. We looked at the status of ongoing audits that the audit function is completing. We reviewed progress on past audits and how departments have responded to the audit recommendations. And we reviewed the audit plan for calendar year 2018. Those are traditional things that we do each meeting. We also were presented the audit of our financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2017 from Reuben Brown. Caleb Lilly, who is the partner for Reuben Brown, reported on those. I think everybody was provided with those. It's a very detailed and lengthy report, both of our kind of internal audit functions and our federal audit responsibilities for particularly federal aid. It was good to hear that we have what is now called an unmodified report, which means that the auditors were satisfied that our auditing and our bookkeeping and accounting in the college met all the necessary standards. Thanks to Dr. Larson, to Rachel and her team for their work on that. So based on that, it is a recommendation of the Audit Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the administration's recommendation to accept the audited financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2017, and I would make that motion.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions anybody might have for Barbara or Rachel? If not, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. In addition, we annually review the charter, the charge, if you will, of the audit and accounting and audit section of the college that's headed by Janelle Vogler. This year, as you see on page 1 of the packet, there is one very small change in the wording of internal audit policy 210.06. And it's a recommendation of the audit committee to accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve that proposed amendment to internal audit policy 210.06 as shown on page 1. I would make that motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions about that change of wording? If not, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. That concludes the audit committee report. The audit committee meets quarterly, unlike our other committees which meet monthly. Next item is the collegial steering committee, which met on the first Tuesday of November. We spent the meeting once again reviewing the issues related to the College Now and concurrent enrollment. I think those discussions are productive. I think we're now ready to move on to the next stages of those, which is getting ready for the next year's assessment tests and improving our coordination and communication on those steps. So I thank everybody that participated in the collegial steering committee. Next item is Human Resources, Trustee Ingram.
Yes, Human Resources Committee met on Monday, November the 6th. Mr. Chair, you just mentioned that we all meet on a monthly basis, but I would remind the other trustees that this is something new to us. We did not meet on a monthly basis prior to this year, and I think it's been really helpful and a really good move. Healthy discussions, lots of good information, so we appreciate that. Jerry Zimmerman, the manager of benefits, provided an overview of the college's employee benefits and processes. Becky Setliver, Vice President of Human Resources, gave an overview of the proposed leadership training program, and we will hear a little bit more about that in our management report this evening. Colleen Chandler, Director of Human Resources, reviewed the results of exit interviews for the third quarter of 2017. Human Resources began conducting those stay interviews in January of this year, which includes interviewing employees at approximately the 6-month service date. The results for full and part-time employees for the first quarter calendar hires of 2017 were reviewed at our meeting. We do have 2 recommendations to present to the board this evening. Ms. Sentliver reviewed recommended modifications to the nepotism policy and to the substance abuse policy as found in the board packet on pages 4 through 7. Human Resources Committee reviewed the recommended changes to the nepotism policy, which has been reviewed as a part of a broader assessment of the college's personnel policies and procedures. The recommended updates serve to clarify the familiar relationships and job classes that will be subject to the policy. Additionally, the updates incorporate the college's existing conflict of interest policies as a framework for analyzing and resolving employment of family members in the workplace. It is the recommendation of the Human Resources Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve modification to the nepotism policy as is shown subsequently in the board packet, and I will make that motion.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the recommendation of the administration regarding the nepotism policy, which appears on page 5 of the board packet. Is there any discussion or are there any questions? Trustee Cross.
Just for curiosity, was there something that prompted this change in policy?
It's something we've been updating these on an ongoing basis, so this is just something that we've been updating, we were looking at.
Well, one of my favorite sayings at the college is, "This is not a hill I want to die on," so I'll retreat and not object, so.
Just to clarify, the entire 400 series is under review, so you'll see more 400s coming forward. We registered.
Did we pay you hourly?
She wishes, right?
I might also add too that the date of the adoption, the last time it looks like this was reviewed was in 1996, is that correct? So it had been a while, it was 21 years, so I thought I would add that.
All in favor of the revisions to the nepotism policy, please signify by saying yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously.
Human Resources Committee also reviewed the recommended changes to the substance abuse policy, which has been reviewed as a part of a broader assessment of the college's personnel policies and procedures. The proposed updates rename the policy to the Substance Abuse and Alcohol Policy and adds language addressing lawful and responsible consumption of alcohol by college employees. A new operating procedure will accompany this policy to establish procedures for Human Resources to implement and enforce the policy. It is the recommendation of the Human Resources Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve modification to the substance abuse policy as shown subsequently in the board packet, and I will so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the modification of the substance abuse policy as shown on page 6 and 7 of the board packet. Is there further discussion? Not all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously as well.
Okay, Human Resources will meet next on Monday, December 4th, and that concludes my report.
Might go back to the statements of principle that we talked about during the lobbyist report. If you, since you probably have not reviewed them until they were at your place today, if you do have questions or concerns, please get those to the president or Tanya ASAP so that we know if there's any need to review those. Next item is the Learning Quality Committee. Trustee Cross.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Learning Quality Committee met Monday, November 6th at 8 a.m. in this room. Trustee Sandate and I were present along with Dr. Arjo and many, many other people in this room. Lynette Beatty gave, a professor of science and geosciences, she gave a sabbatical presentation about her work in the fall of 2016 to design a geology lab manual base on open educational resources, or OER, and citizen science applications that incorporate a set of earth science literary principles developed by the National Science Foundation. A number of presentations were made. People that were present had the option to download 2 different apps on their smartphones so that we could then have a presentation that she gave for the seismometer app and then the MyShake app. And Professor Beatty referenced the recent Mexico City earthquake and gave a demonstration using the phone app placed on top of different earth materials and discussed the different causes for the different readings. So I think with all the area earthquakes, I was pretty impressed with the presentation. Next, Dr. Gurb Singh gave a presentation regarding affiliation agreements. He presented a new affiliation agreement to the committee. The agreement will be with Lawrence Memorial Hospital to provide clinical experience for students enrolled in nursing programs. The agreement was approved by the committee. Complete details can be found subsequently in the consent agenda portion of the November 16th packet. And Dr. McLeod, Vice President of Academic Affairs, CAO, gave a summary of the proposed 2017 AQUIP Project Institutional Learning Outcomes. A faculty-driven committee was charged with developing the outcomes. The proposal will be implemented in January 2018 to be used as an assessment tool during the program review process, as shown subsequently in the board packet. And we always have 3 AQUIP projects going on?
Yes. At any given time, at least one of them has to be academic in nature, but the campus as a whole has to have 3 going at all times.
Okay, thank you, Dr. McLeod. And finally, James Hopper, Professor of Web Development and Digital Media and Chair of the Educational Affairs Committee, presented several curriculum modifications to the committee effective academic year 2018-19, which you can find in the Learning Quality Agenda here on pages 9 through 12. And the Learning Quality Committee will meet next on December 4th, Mr. Chair, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Lee. Questions for Trustee Cross? Okay, if not, we're ready for the Management Committee report. Trustee Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Management Committee met on Wednesday, November 1st at 8 a.m. here in the boardroom. The information related to that meeting is in your board packet from page 15 to page 23. We received a report from Barbara Larson, Executive Vice President for Finance Administration, on the agreement with the National Academy of Railroad Sciences, with Carl Sandburg College and Spoon River College, and that agreement can be found in your consent agenda on page 48 of your board packet. I would say again that we are unique as a community college in that we have these agreements with certain colleges around the country, and it's a real attribute to our college. We had a presentation from Bruce Hartman, Executive Director of the Nerman Museum of Contemporary Art. The presentation included information on his operating budget, educational and fundraising activities, and highlighted some of the prominent pieces of art within the collection. We have some pieces that have appreciated greatly over the past years since they've been acquired. Museum is in its 10th year. It's really difficult to pay proper credence to Bruce Hartman's report because he, as you know him, is very detailed in his information, and he gave lots of great information. I would just highlight by saying that in 1990, the museum had 102 pieces of art owned by the college. At the end of, currently at 2017, we have 1,624 pieces of art, and those pieces are valued at just under $18 million. And so the whole issue of proper insurance, proper security, proper temperature control of taking care of those pieces is pretty significant. In 2016, we added 94 pieces to the collection, and part of that is due to the art show that we have annually called Beyond Bounds. And I don't recall the number. I know we had a very successful Beyond Bounds this year again. And Bruce has such a wonderful relationship with artists around the country that they bring in these pieces to donate for the auction. And the proceeds from that allow us to purchase additional pieces. Just to give you an idea of the network we have, and these are just cities that we have exchange agreements with, where our pieces from the Nerman go out into the country. Denver, Long Island, New York, Boston, New York, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Columbus, Ohio, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Arizona, Kansas City, Salem, Massachusetts, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Portland, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Sedalia, Missouri. There is a very significant museum there. It kind of throws you a little bit when you're talking about Chicago and D.C. and New York and Long Island and Sedalia, but it's a meaningful relationship. And then internationally, we have exchanges with Warsaw, Poland, Montreal, Canada, and Kassel, Germany. So our museum not only has a national flavor, but it certainly has an international flavor, and a lot of that has to do with Mr. Hartman and his staff, and the commitment this college has to contemporary and fine art. I would say for the public that we're just not about contemporary art, and we have several pieces of art throughout the college in various buildings. And again, it makes this campus quite unique, even to some of the four-year schools that envy having the collection that we have. Kate Allen provided the annual report on the foundation. We received an excellent report. That report goes to the foundation. Trustee Ingram will speak a little bit more to that in her report, but I would say that the foundation finished fiscal year 2017 with $32 million in net assets. We provided more than $1.1 million in scholarships, which is about 1,200 students. And the endowment fund is over $21 million. So the foundation is in very good hands and has oversight by a foundation board. Dr. Larson also provided the semi-annual update on college investments with the municipal investment pool. That information is in your packet. Mitch Borchers, Assistant Vice President of Business Services, presented the sole source report. And again, that's a summary of awarded bids between $25,000 and $100,000, and that summary is on pages 17 and 18 of your board packet. Rex Hayes, Associate Vice President, Campus Services and Facilities Planning, gave a monthly update on our capital infrastructure projects, and that can be found on page 21. We do have one recommendation, Mr. Chair, and I guess what I would ask is, we're going to have some discussion about this. And would you like to have the discussion before I move the recommendation, or would you rather I move the recommendation and then have discussion?
Why don't you describe it and make your motion, and then we'll
Well,
discuss.
this is a RFP for leadership development training at the college. And as you can see in your board packet, we notified 20 firms and 11 firms responded. The management committee and Trustee Cross and Trustee Lindstrom were there, and we'll ask for their observations here in a second. But I guess whenever there's a wide variance in bids, at least that tells me that did everybody understand the bid? Did everybody bid the same things? And you can see that the lowest bid was $38,000 and the highest bid was $331,000. And there were several that were under $100,000. And as we discussed that, it was determined that not all bidders included the same costs. For example, some included travel, some did not. There's a wide variation in the number of hours that would be devoted to this leadership plan. And so we really vetted all of that pretty thoroughly in the management committee. And then because there still remains some questions, the management team, Karen Markley and Becky Centelvier and Barbara Larson and Mitch Borchers agreed to meet with us individually if we had further questions, which that occurred. And I had a number of questions about it as well. I would say, Mr. Chair, that my questions have been resolved. But I would like to say this. We have a budget this year, an operating budget of $150 million plus. 74% of that cost goes into staff, faculty, and salaries, and all of our people investment. If we look at the recommendation of living as a leader, and I'm going to move that recommendation for $132,000, that comes out to 0.0009% of our budget. Now, I realize we have other leadership costs and travel, professional development, et cetera. But I think the question we have to deal with is, do we expect our development to come by chance, or do we want to have a purposeful plan to help develop our leadership? And so I asked the question, how does this align with our strategic plan? And Chris, thanks for raising your issues on how a strategic plan is put together. And it does include a lot of people, and many times the general public's not aware of that. But our strategic plan going into the next 3 or 4 years deals with issues that even came out of a SWOT analysis that was conducted by a number of employees on staff. We went through that SWOT analysis at our October board retreat. And another question I had was, how does this leadership development program align with that SWOT analysis? A couple of those points in the SWOT analysis was weak communication. We can improve how we communicate with one another. Opportunity for engagement in a purposeful way in terms of development. And so I think that I'm very comfortable that this plan supports our strategic plan. This program deals with the weaknesses and threats that came out of our SWOT analysis. So if we're going to pay attention to all of the hours that goes into those decisions, it makes sense for us to have a leadership development program that will support that. So why LAL? What are some other reasons why their cost is a little higher? And it's not the most expensive one, by the way. They're web-based, which the others weren't. They have a mobile application, which the others didn't. It's a very strong coaching component. They have more small group coaching hours than the others. They have more hours for leader participation, and their workshop hours per participant are greater than the others. So it seems to me that the detail in this leadership development program, and we're going to engage 50 leaders initially, and those leaders then will be taught and trained to develop others. And I think if I've listened carefully, that emphasis is going to be on younger staff, younger faculty, first-year folks, and so on. I don't know where we stand on leadership, but I've always felt that unless you change attitude of an individual, we can go to a conference, we can go through an activity, and we can receive new information, perhaps even new wisdom. But if we don't allow that to impact our attitudes, and then a change in attitude changes behavior, and then that behavior leads to development of people, I'm not sure that the value is there. And I'm convinced that this program will give us that kind of detail. A great question. Trustee Lindstrom raised it in our meeting, and again, is that what kind of evaluation will we have? If you go back to our board retreat as we prepare for the Higher Learning Commission, you have a process. And that process leads to a decision, I think, Becky, if I heard you clearly. And then that decision leads to an evaluation of the process, and we review that process. And then we make adaptions and changes. So I'm expecting that we'll have that implied here, so that not just at the end of June, but throughout the process, what kind of information do we have that this program is impactful? Are we, in fact, meeting the goals of our strategic plan, addressing the SWOT analysis with leadership development? So with that, that's where I'm on this program, and I'll defer to Trustee Lindstrom and Trustee Cross for their viewpoints.
Trustee Lindstrom?
Yeah, I think Trustee Cook summed it up very well. I would just add that trustees here we're volunteers, and some people are aware of that, some people are not. We are acutely aware of that as we serve in this position. One of the benefits, though, however, that we have in being volunteers for the college is that we get to work with great staff and professionals that know what they're doing. I have expressed some concern on this agenda item, but I also, in doing so, wanted to communicate my confidence in our staff and the processes we have in place to make these kind of decisions. I was a little bit uneasy with the recommendation, and staff has bent over backwards to make sure that I'm comfortable with the process that went on, and I am. And there are some issues that going forward I would like to see, and perhaps this is not only a 1 year that we're voting on tonight, but it's renewable 5 continuous years afterwards. And so what I had suggested, and I would like staff, and I hope staff would agree to this, is reporting back to us very similar to what we have introduced with the sabbaticals. So I am in favor of this, and I am very supportive of staff's recommendation.
Trustee Cross, do you have any comments as a member of the committee?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, thank you. I concur with both trustees Lindstrom and Cook. They had concerns and reservations. Mine was that we might spend $250,000 every 2 years on a project like this, but the staff assured me and reassured me, referencing much of what trustees Cook and Lindstrom have stated, that this will overall benefit the college, and we're not going to have this sizable expenditure every time. We need to engage in leadership training, so I'm comfortable with it and appreciate the time and effort staff put in to make sure we were. So, thank you.
Can I clarify one thing?
You may.
I do want to clarify, this is going to start at the top and then work its way down. So and the reason we do that is because the leaders of those leaders, the people going through that training, they need to know the language, they need to know what's being trained. So we need to start at the top, and then once those groups get in, then the people under them just start following through.
So what does that mean? Is this, I heard 50 employees would be in this first?
The top 50 employees, the top leaders, and then the next group would be the people that report to them. But let's say somebody reports to me, if they went through the program and I hadn't went through it, I wouldn't know how to coach them as they go through it. So it needs to start at the top and work down.
And this is faculty and staff?
It's starting out with just administration, but eventually it's going to go to all staff and faculty.
That would include deans and assistant deans and directors.
Trustee Ingram?
Yes, thank you. I think one of the things that we heard in human resources, we don't always hear what you're doing in management. We get to read it when we receive that report, but we were also a part of a similar presentation in human resources and had the opportunity to ask lots of questions. I think the amount was, kind of something that caught us off guard, but we asked some good questions that day in our committee. We've also always referred to the vetting that goes on in our committees before it ever gets here. So I think we had a really good opportunity to ask some questions, but much like several of you, I made some follow-up calls about this, and there was never I'll have to get back to you to answer that question. I mean, the answers were forthcoming, and I just feel like they have vetted it, we have vetted it, and I will support it for sure. But I appreciate staff and all that you have done to bring this forward to us and answered every single question that we had, like I said, without getting back to us. So they've taken a hard look at this.
Any other questions? Is the 132,000 then, is that because we're only doing 7 months of the year and the full 12 months is 253,000?
It's actually a 2-year program.
2 years.
Okay.
The 253 is for the 2 years.
Okay, and the contract would be renewable for 5 additional years in 1-year increments, so it would be half of that for year 3?
Possibly even less than that. Our plan is to get internal people certified so they can deliver the training, and then that will reduce those costs of facilitation and travel. We would still want to hire external coaches to come in initially to train people how to coach. But that's where those costs will then start to go down over the 5 years.
So is this a 7-year?
No.
It's a 6-year contract?
It's renewable for 5 years.
So it's 5 years and 7 months? because we're starting December 1st this year through June 30th, and then
I
5
believe,
additional
Mr.
years.
Chair, what we're recommending is that the 132,000 will take us through the end of June of 2018.
Right.
And then, if we approve the second year, it would be that amount minus from 253. And what we do beyond that, we'll have a new pricing, because as Karen has indicated, our intent is to train people internally, and hopefully those costs will be reduced.
I'm just trying to figure out, this is a 19-month contract then, for $132,000.
Potentially.
It's a 7 months through the rest of this fiscal year, and then it's another year.
Yes.
So when it says there's a 2-year, initial term will be, it's a 2-year program for coaching, we're really doing that in 19 months.
No, it's actually gonna go into another fiscal year after that.
Okay, so it's 24 months of coaching.
24 months, starting with January, when we'll start rolling it out. We'll start our consultations with them once it's approved. We hope that would be in December. And then we could begin the rollout in January of 2018. So then it would roll, it's actually gonna roll across 3 fiscal years is what's going to happen. The reason we ask for a renewable is when we start a second cohort, if that would be what we would decide to do, we wanted to hold the prices. And so that will guarantee us at this price range, especially those materials, because that's usually what we see go up the most.
If we
We
did.
would be bringing it back this June for that.
Right, but I don't want to start something, then, I mean, I want to evaluate it as it goes along, and we may decide it's not worth renewing, but I don't want to assume that from the start, and I apologize for not asking more questions ahead of the meeting. But if we did the entire length of the renewals, so 5 years and 7 months, how many people do we anticipate would go through this, including once we train our own folks? I mean, do we have, what's the goal of faculty and staff to have through this program by the end of 5 years and 9 months, or 7 months?
We would keep taking it on down through the organization. We would initially start, with our administration, our first list we've looked at is around 150 people, but you would want to keep taking that on down through the organization. So, it could be unlimited, depending on how many people have that as part of their portfolio or have identified that they want to participate in those programs.
And that will, it will be a voluntary participation?
The initial, our hope would be those people that were invited would be participating.
It's a large expenditure, both totally and per person. So I think it's important that we review it, as Trustee Cook said, as we go along, and identify some measurable outcomes at the start that we can then evaluate. Because if you Google leadership programs, you'll get about 1 million responses in 2.6 seconds.
Absolutely.
So, all right. I'm not critical. I just want to make sure we understand this and we're watching it as we go forward, because it's a big chunk of money.
Yes.
Trustee Lindstrom, yeah, Dave.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that although there are clauses in the contract or the agreement that would allow for an extension, there is no extension unless it comes back to this board.
Right.
No, I agree, but just like our other contracts, when we do 5-year renewable contracts, we're anticipating, because they hold prices, so we're anticipating that we're going to continue to renew those and we're going to get good service. And I anticipate that here as well.
Absolutely.
If I may, I think the scrutiny of the board is wonderful on this issue. This is an investment in people, and this is an investment in the future of the college. If you look at our board packet, Tom, there, we probably dropped $250,000 on a software package, just like that, right? No debate. Rex, how much?
That's because we didn't understand the software.
Right. Right. How much should we spend on tuck pointing, Rex? How much should we spend on tuck pointing? Yeah. So this is something that goes, that hopefully will benefit the people who work at this college and to make this a better place. So that's why we wholeheartedly support this investment in people.
And just to reiterate, this is in alignment with our strategic plan.
And also, if you look at I believe the engagement study, what are you doing for us? How can you help us get better? And I think this plays a big part in that. So again, applaud the review of this proposal, because I believe it's probably the first time we've done anything to this degree, and it obviously deserves pretty close attention.
Right. Okay.
Now, that was going to be
Trustee
my,
Ingram? Yeah.
yes. My question was, when was the last time we ever had a comprehensive leadership development program?
Not since I've been in staff development. I mean, we do yearly internal leadership institutes, but a lot of that is about the college and more tactical. This is more strategic in those relationships and soft skills, not so much procedural based.
Right, thank you.
There's no further discussion? All in favor of
Wait,
the?
we haven't
Oh,
made the recommendation yet. I need to make the motion. It is the
okay.
recommendation of the Management Committee that the Board of Trustees accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve the proposal from Living as a Leader for a Leadership Development Training Program at a total expenditure not to exceed $132,750 during fiscal year 2017, 2018, and I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's now been moved and seconded. Thank you, Jerry. Any further discussion? Nancy?
I do have one other thought, and I think it was actually Trustee Lindstrom who recommended that we do some evaluation and have something continuously going on, which I would support, but typically that goes to learning quality. And I think it would almost be better if it came here to us, or went through learning quality and came here, just so that we all heard it.
You can just have it.
We could just have it.
You can just have it.
Well, we will see something before June 30th of 2018, before we'll need to renew it. So I think, I know you do that all the time in your continuing ed stuff. You look for measurable outcomes, so that's what we're looking for.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perhaps a trustee would like to volunteer to be a part of this program and experience it firsthand.
I'll do that.
Well, thank you.
I think it's unfair to ask us right here, but certainly we can get back to the president on that. No, that's a good idea. That's a good idea, but there's no better way to evaluate it than that, so.
That's funny.
All right. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
One final thing before I finish my report. It seems that one of the benefits of our discussion, at least I feel this way, is that whenever we have such a gap in the bids, I think it helps the whole team take a look at, okay, let's make sure all vendors understand what they're bidding for. And so we can compare apples to apples in that old sense. And so I think we get better at a bid process every time we vet these kinds of issues. And I, like Trustee Lindstrom, really have all kinds of confidence in our staff to make sure that they bring forward the best recommendation. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
I wanted to add one thing on on our art collection. I think it's important for the community to know we don't spend, maybe not ever, but we rarely spend general taxpayer dollars on our art. It is art that is donated to the college from folks who appreciate the fact that we house it and have a place to display it, whether it's in a building like this or it's in the Nerman Museum. But I will also note, because I know Dr. Larson is aware of it and Dr. Sopcich is, that it costs us to acquire it, display it, insure it, secure it, and store it. So it is not without cost. And at the audit committee, we did hear something I didn't report on earlier. We did hear about the development of an acquisition policy, because sometimes we get art donated that we really don't want. It may not fit our collection, it may not fit our themes, it may not be of the quality or value that we want, and those are hard things, because somebody offers you something and we need a policy, and so Bruce and his team are developing that with staff so that our collection is worthy of whatever is donated, and whatever is donated is worthy of our collection. That was pretty good. I think it's important that we understand there is a cost to the college for having a first-class art museum on campus and high-quality art scattered throughout the campus. I think it's worthwhile because it indicates our support for the arts and culture, but we balance that with the cost, so. Trustee Lindstrom.
You can call me Doctor.
Almost call you doctor.
I was going to say something very similar to what you just mentioned, so thank you. And just to add on to that, as part of the presentation Bruce Hartman made to the Management Committee, there was a gentleman from New York that made a significant donation to Johnson County Community College in Overland Park, Kansas, so.
Okay, I think we're done with Management Committee. Treasury report, Trustee Cross?
Yes, Mr. Chair Musel. The treasurer's report can be found in the board packet, and the board packet, some items of note include. Page 1 of the treasurer's report is the general post-secondary technical education fund summary. September was actually the third month of the college's 2017-18 fiscal year. An ad valorem tax distribution of $4,553,901 was received from Johnson County during September and was distributed as follows. There was $4.296 million to the general fund, $240,940 to the capital outlay fund, and $16,359 to the special assessment fund, for a total of $4,553,901. Also during September, the college made 16 of 20 semi-annual payments on the Series 2009 certificates of participation issued to fund construction of OHEC. It's the Olathe Health Education Center, in the amount of $1.7 million. An ad valorem tax distribution of $1.169 million was received from Johnson County in October and will be reflected in next month's report. The college's unencumbered cash balance as of September 30th, 2017 in all funds was $98.9 million, which is approximately $13.4 million higher than at the same time last year, Mr. Chair. Expenditures in the primary operating funds are within the approved budgetary limits, and it is a recommendation of the college administration that the Board of Trustees approve the Treasurer's report for the month ended September 30th, 2017, subject to audit.
Second.
And I so move.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the treasurer's report for the month ending September 30, 2017, subject to future audit. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the strategic plan update. Dr. Sopcich.
Thank you, Trustee Musil. Strategic plans can be boring. Do we need to take a break?
We still have a quorum. I think you should proceed.
On page 37 in your packet, there's a recommendation from administration regarding the strategic plan. If you go to the subsequent pages after that, there's greater detail on the various strategies that are enclosed in this plan. The strategic plan has several strategies, 5 institutional priorities, and those are academic excellence, student success, employee engagement, community engagement, and operational excellence. You had reviewed these at the retreat on Saturday, October 7th, and then again at the meeting, the trustee meeting on October 26th. So the board's had 2 opportunities to review the strategic plan. We'd like to be able to go ahead with this recommendation and for a vote.
Is there a motion to approve the strategic plan as shown in the board packet?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation of the college administration to approve the strategic plan 2017 through 2020 as shown on pages 38 and 39 of the board packet. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Sopcich, your monthly report to the board.
Thank you, Trustee Musil. You've all received the monthly report to the board. This is really, I think, one of the stronger ones that we've seen. They're all very good, but this has some outstanding examples of quality in the classroom, the way we're across the country at presentations, working partnerships with various industry to benefit students. So I hope you get a chance to review this. The next part of the President's report is going to feature Dr. Jay Antle, as he's going to demonstrate the ways that sustainability is incorporated into our curriculum here. And you may be aware of this. I mean, nationally, we're really recognized now as a leader in sustainability. This is because of not only the work of Dr. Antle, but also the faculty and staff who work with him to promote this program. There is also, and this is to Jay's credit, a very tangible benefit with regards to how we manage our utility costs here, and that's thanks to the input of many on Jay's staff. So, Jay?
This is what happens when you tell something to the president, next thing you know, you're giving a talk at a board meeting. So
It was so impressive.
all right, actually, this is really about the graphic design program as it is much about what we do in our office. So I'm passing around a couple of items which were designed by graphic design students. Some of you may be aware the graphic design program on a regular basis takes on projects from nonprofits around the community who, of their own, develop their own graphic graphics, their own campaign, their own et cetera. And so we ended up being some of their clients for this particular semester. And so what you see in the screen in front of you is one example of what the students came up with in the classes taught by Ryan Jones and Nancy Schneider-Wilson. So here we have a zero waste to landfill graphic that we hopefully will be using over the course of the upcoming years, assuming that Chris Gray and his team sign off on it. If not, we'll have conversations. We actually, in our office, have an entire hallway full of these designs that were done by students. And here we have sort of the 60s theme. Those of you who are on campus know what these are referring to, our recycling programs, composting, et cetera, et cetera. Again, looking at banners, some of the students did guerrilla marketing pieces, some of what you're seeing going around now, having to do the Open Pedal Farm. So our staff, my staff, worked as clients for the students. There were sessions in which feedback were given on initial drafts, Earth Day. Here we have your punny section. Are you feeling beat down? Then eat more veggies. So all kinds of good stuff here. And this is, again, an example of partnership between areas on campus. And there's your beat down. And here's actually just one example of what our wall looks like in our office. So if any of you are on campus and want to come by and see some of the work of our students, this is a great example of that. I know graphic design's doing other work right now with other nonprofits, and so this is the kind of work that our students do on a regular basis. Just a couple of other quick things that we've got going on in our world. We had a speaker on campus last week talking about severe weather and climate change. This week we had a speaker from the University of Maryland talk to all of our first and second year nursing students about sustainability in the nursing profession. So lots of great stuff going on. And last but not least, JCCC will be recognized by the Mid-America Regional Council at an event in December, recognizing 10 years of successful projects. I'll be speaking along with one of our students, Aaron Cruz, so you're all invited to that if you're interested in attending. So that was almost 5 minutes.
Excellent. So Jay, how do the students, to what degree do they embrace the challenge of incorporating sustainability into their design work?
I think a lot of them enjoyed working on something that many of them were passionate about, but didn't necessarily know a lot about the details on campus. And so it's interesting, our conversations now, people talk about sustainability, we ask them, what do we do on campus? We want to know what they think, what they know. And everyone's currently responding back with, we love that paper towel composting program. And that's basically because it's everywhere and the graphics catch people's eye. And so I think these students were engaging in some of that. And so the more they learned, the more ornate their graphics became. And so this was an educational process for us to some degree to figure out how these folks do engage in a graphic design for a client. But for them, it was to learn more about what's actually happening on this campus.
Yeah, so when Dr. Antle presents, he's usually showing graphs of electrical consumption, right? But this is a big part of what we do, what Jay does with sustainability, as well as the faculty on campus, which makes it extra special and very effective for us. So.
I just looked back at the treasurer's report because it has our budget in there. And we are an all-electric campus, and our budget for this year is $3,050,000 for electricity. So the work that's been done on campus to keep that number relatively flat over a number of years with increasing buildings and increasing rates has been very impressive. If a 5% increase in that would cost us $150,000.
Yeah,
so.
we're down roughly 25% in electrical usage since 2009.
Right, so it's very impressive. Trustee Cook and then Trustee Ingram.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I reported this a couple of months ago, maybe, I think it was 2 months ago, maybe one, when Dr. Antle gave a detailed report on sustainability to the management company. And one of the impressive points was the efforts to include other departments on the campus. So it's just not the sustainability department. I think that he and staff have built great relationships with other faculty and other departments, and they're all gaining some responsibility that this is a campus-wide effort, not just the sustainability team. So we try to make sure we engage other departments, and this is an example of them doing that very, very well.
Nancy.
I would also say, I've got two things. You just made me think of another one, because the Olathe School District has a program at their new high school that
I'm on their advisory board.
I know you are, and I think that's a really nice segue to the community college and the efforts that we're doing here as well. But, and I'm putting you completely on the spot, but some of the dollars that, or the savings that you all receive go back into student scholarships as well?
For recycling, that's correct.
For recycling, okay.
Right.
And I think that's huge. That's a big deal, so thank you very much.
Well, lots of folks on campus can take credit for a lot of that, including the recycling, because it's not just me or my staff or the students who do that, so.
And that's the
this is a campus-wide
collaboration.
initiative.
That's the collaboration. he
Students
was
pay a
just talking about.
sustainability fee as well, right? So
Eh,
students agree to that, and that is part of a campus-wide effort on behalf of our students, so they support that with their own.
And they help decide how those
dollars.
dollars are spent.
Right. Okay. Dave?
I mentioned this to Jay before the meeting. This is not a message that just comes from staff or from Dr. Antle. I frequent the coffee shop before our board meetings, and as I was doing it, their employees were suggesting that I get a permanent cup instead of a paper cup, and then went on to brag about how recognized Johnson County Community College was in our sustainability field. So you're communicating the message, and their students and employees are communicating it.
$5 per student goes a long way in terms of.
Trustee Cross?
I had to hide my paper cup.
I saw that, yeah.
I want to,
And your plastic bottle, all of your plastic bottles.
They're recyclable.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Professor Hansel, you've been key in teaching me, anyway, how to, the importance of governing, and I think taking your message to all ears. And it was shocking for this observer to learn that a former Secretary of Agriculture in Kansas was actually a closet environmentalist when he was in the United States Senate. And the importance of taking our message to everybody for funding and for the benefit of the college. And I want to thank you for your ambassadorship to the cause.
Well, thank you, but this was not really supposed to be about my staff or me. This is about the students here at the college. And this cross-pollination that really is what we're here for. One final note on that, accounting classes. Christy Howell on my staff spent 3 hours yesterday talking to 3 classes back-to-back accounting. Their accounting textbook now has a chapter on sustainability metrics, and when the case study was what we do here on campus. That's how this is all supposed to work.
Terrific, Jay, thanks a lot. A couple other things, real quick. Sure. Many of you were at Some Enchanted Evening the other night, $640,000 for scholarships. I'd like to compliment Kate Allen and her team for making that event happen. Also, the co-chairs, Britton and Clint Robinson. Clint's father sat at this very desk as one of the first trustees of the college years ago. They did a marvelous job, as did John Stewart heading the solicitation team. I think 640 was a record, and of course that money goes to scholarships, and under Kate's leadership, we allocated $1.2 million in scholarship funds to students last year, which was an all-time high. The highlight of the evening, though, as you all know, was our student, Angela Walker, who really brought the house down. Her speaking ability, the content, the way she presented herself, I think is a reflection of the education and training she receives here at Johnson County Community College. So kudos to everyone all the way around on that evening. A couple weeks ago, I was invited for the first time in 4.5 years to a meeting of the K-12 school superintendents. This was brought together by Kenny Southwick, Superintendent Southwick at Shawnee Mission. They're very, very excited about the new CTE building that we're putting in. They are very anxious to see if there are ways that we can work together so their students could perhaps partake of the facility we're going to have. And I think this is great because it demonstrates kind of a collaboration and a utilization of one facility, which would be a first. I think of particular interest are the districts like in Spring Hill, DeSoto. Even though Gardner Edgerton just built their brand new facility, still this is going to be unlike anything else around. So it's generating a lot of excitement. And of course, the $10 million Centerland gift. Centerland Foundation, largest gift in their history, $10 million. Certainly largest gift in ours. That happens because of really a campus-wide effort. And I know you have been more involved in fundraising than I believe any group in the past, and I think it shows that. Trustee Musil, Kate and I called on our Centerland Foundation, and I think there was such a good vibe, and they have so much confidence in what we're doing here, the leadership that we have, that they're very excited about making that gift. We're getting feedback from across the country as that news has spread, thanks to Chris's team. It's kind of phenomenal to get kudos from various corners of the United States. Also, of course, Kate's team was a big part of that, but everyone here. You may know the story of the Yardleys. The reason that they supported this college is because one of our police officers escorted them to their car and opened their doors for them. And that tells you the importance of everybody working together. And I'm sure the Centerlands were very, very impressed by this campus. So thanks to everybody on campus, as well as to all of you for your leadership. And that concludes the report tonight. Thank you.
Questions? Jerry?
Not a question, but just a comment, if I might, Dr. Sobchak. I think the story to the community on Angela, the speaker at Some Enchanted Evening, is here's a young lady who is from Georgia and had some serious challenges back home and wanted to start life anew, and went online and found out about Johnson County Community College, did some research, and didn't have a friend here in the Kansas City area. She's been here now a year and a half. She loves Johnson County Community College. It is everything she perceived it to be on her research. She works part-time for the Johnson County Sheriff's Department, and she is going to transfer to UMKC and major in criminal law and applying for a position with the FBI. So my point in all of that is that someone took a chance in a very discouraged life up to that point and came to a whole new area. And this faculty and this campus and this college took her in, and she just was a terrific speaker. The other thing I would say is about MEC. The Midwest Higher Ed Compact met here Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. It's 12 states. And Dr. Sobchak, you did a wonderful job at the dinner here Monday night on this campus. And I was pleased to know that Tom Clayton was very instrumental. MEC is made up of 12 states, and primarily four-year schools, but a lot of community college influence. Trustee Ingram and I had the opportunity to sit in on one of the sessions Monday afternoon at the Marriott Hotel. And again, I feel so good about being on this board because of the nationwide awareness by four-year institutions, as well as our colleagues in the community college network, of the success of this campus. And it all goes back to people like Angela, who took a chance on this college and was highly successful.
And Trustee Cook, why did she take a chance on this particular college?
Because she
It was recommended to her to come here all the way from Georgia.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Do we have geographic boundaries?
There are a lot of people who live in Atlanta. I think that could be a good one.
I'm sorry.
There are probably a whole bunch of Johnson counties around the country we could move into without changing our name at all. All right, we'll move on to, there's no old business I'm aware of. On new business, I have asked and intend to appoint as our nominating committee for officer and committee positions for beginning in January, now that the election was moved and Trustee-elect Snyder and Trustee-elect Lawson will take over in January. I intend to appoint Trustee Lindstrom and Trustee Ingram as our nominating committee. They will nominate a slate of officers, chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. They will also nominate positions on our committees, which are management, of which the chair, I think, is automatically a member. And then
No.
two other members? No, the chair is not a member. That's right.
Automatically a
That's all
member
it
of
is.
the audit.
Three
committee.
members, 2 members for human resources, 2 members for learning quality. The audit committee is automatically the chair and vice chair of the board. Collegial steering is the chair and vice chair of the board. And then we have 3 liaison positions, 1 for the foundation, 1 for Kansas Association of Community College Trustees, and 1 for the Johnson County Educational Research Triangle, JCERT. So David and Nancy will be in charge of that. They will be in touch with existing trustees and the trustees-elect to talk to you about various positions, and will recommend those to us at our December board meeting. Any questions about that? If not, then we're ready for reports from board liaisons. The first one is Dr. Arjo, Faculty Association. Thank you for waiting patiently.
Good evening. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to speak. You might remember at the beginning of the year, I pointed out that this was going to be a pretty big year. We have a convergence of 3 major things: the Board of Trustee election, negotiations, and the accreditation process. So 1 down, 2 to go. So let me extend on behalf of the association and the faculty my congratulations to trustees Cross and Cook for your reelection, to trustees-elect Paul Snyder and Angelina Lawson. Welcome. We look very much forward to getting to know you and working with you and developing a good relationship with you. Thank you very much to Dr. Cook and Lee Cross for all your work on behalf of the college, and we're looking forward to continue to work with you. Henry, we very much appreciate your willingness to serve on the board and our chance to work with you, and we hope you don't make yourself a stranger and you continue to be involved with JCCC. There's not been a FA meeting since the last time I spoke, so I've really nothing new to report in terms of what the Faculty Association has been up to. But I do want to say just a little about a topic that I was supposed to talk about, collegial steering, but I didn't get a chance to. So on the agenda was the topic of academic freedom, which I put
We
on
didn't
there.
cut you off, though. We're going to do it next
I
month.
know,
right? I mean,
I'll get
okay,
my
this is-
chance, and I'm not going to say all tonight what I was hoping to say then, but I did want to kind of tie a little bit of the election to what I've been thinking about in terms of academic freedom. So this came up in response to the Higher Learning Committee's evaluation of our systems portfolio, which mentioned academic freedom as a issue that we might want to look at. So I've been reading a lot about this topic in the last few weeks, last months, trying to learn more about it myself. And it's a very interesting, very multifaceted business. Concerns about academic freedom and the first use of that term really began to emerge when American colleges and universities began to change in the latter part of the 19th century. Prior to this, most universities and colleges were mostly professional training schools, training lawyers and doctors, and they're very frequently under the auspices of a church or something like that. So as they became more secular and as the curriculum broadened to include the sciences and liberal arts, the governing structure began to change. Whereas before, the governance was largely through the church and faculty did the administration. What emerged is what we now see today. You have a board of trustees or a board of regents, an administrative staff, and then faculty. And not uncommonly, membership of the first two is drawn from outside the academic world. So this is what got people concerned that we need to protect the academic mission by empowering faculty as one of those three sources of governance within the institution. So in order for that to work, there needs to be clearly a good relationship between these three. And though recent events have reminded us we're not immune to certain disruptions, I do think recently we've had pretty good relationships. So on behalf of the faculty, let me express my confidence and certainly my hope that as we seat a new board, we move into the second half of this academic year, that those relationships will continue and we can do a lot of work, good work, because we still have two big things to get through. So thank you. I will take
Questions for Dennis? Thank you. Good thoughts, and we will pick that up and learn more. And I've already learned because I read the 1940 policy statement as
Good for
as
you.
amended in 1970 something.
Yes,
So,
1970.
all right. Thank you very much. JCERT, Johnson County Education and Research Triangle, Trustee Lindstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I start, I'd like to thank Trustee Sundate for filling in for me last time. Although I was on the phone and conference at the last trustee meeting, I wasn't able to make I didn't think it was appropriate for me to make a report over the phone. So Trustee Sundate, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I am pleased to present the report for the Johnson County Education Research Triangle for November 2017. As a reminder, the Johnson County Education Research Triangle was created in 2008 when the county's voters supported a 1/8 sales tax. Today, that tax generates more than $17 million annually to advance academic research and business endeavors at its partner organizations, Kansas State Olathe Campus, KU Edwards Campus, and KU Clinical Research Campus. The authority is governed by a 7-member board. One member is appointed by Kansas State University. 2 members are appointed by Kansas University. 1 is appointed by Johnson County government. 1 is appointed by the governor of Kansas. 1 is appointed by the Kansas Board of Regents, and 1 comes from this body here, the Johnson County Board of Trustees. The Johnson County, the JCERT Authority last met on Monday, November 6th at 7:30 at the KU Medical Research Center in Fairway. The meeting was called to order by Chairman Gerlach. We approved the minutes from our last meeting. We received a report from our PR firm and extended our contract with Parker Communications. We received and approved the annual audit of the JCERT Authority's financial statements. We authorized payment of an invoice from our attorney, and we heard reports from Dr. Ralph Richardson, Dean and CEO from Kansas State Olathe, Dr. Steve Williamson, Director of Clinical Research at the KU Clinical Research Center, and Dr. David Cook, Vice Chancellor of KU Edwards Campus. All three were particularly pleased with the progress being made in the areas of enhancing academic program development, increasing outreach efforts, as well as their expanded research and collaborative relationships with industry and academic partners. Dr. Richardson noted the increasing number of graduate students selecting Kansas State Olathe programs and the building of infrastructure at the campus in order to offer more professional industry opportunities. Dr. Cook, not this Dr. Cook, but Dr. David Cook, noted the overall growth of credit hours and visitors at the KU Edwards campus. And all three gentlemen expressed, after they were asked the question, is the sales tax revenue being generated in Johnson County, is it keeping up with inflation and the growth of their programs? They all three gentlemen expressed an appreciation of what they classified as a tremendous gift from the people of Johnson County, who all make the incredible work that those three bodies do make that possible. And along that line, sales tax revenues for the month of September were $1,490,123. We have not yet, because our meeting, our trustee meeting here is it's closer to the beginning of the month, we don't have our receipts in from October yet. For more information, I would encourage everybody to visit www.jocotriangle.com and follow the JCERT on Facebook and Twitter. The next meeting of the Johnson County Education Research Triangle will be in January, but that date has not been etched in stone yet. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Questions for Trustee Lindstrom? If not, we're ready for the KACCT report from Dr. Cook. The Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The KACCT will meet December 3rd and 4th at Colley Community College. I believe Trustee-elect Lawson, myself, and Dr. Sopcich are planning to attend that meeting. And I think part of our discussion will be anticipating a new legislative agenda and what we can anticipate from Topeka. That concludes my report.
Questions? Trustee Cross?
If I may, yeah, I believe Trustee-elect Snyder came around and introduced himself prior to the meeting, and I'd invite Trustee-elect Lawson to come forward. And I'd be glad to introduce you to everyone if she wanted to do that. So congratulations again to everyone, and thank you to Trustee Sandate for his service. And many of us do sincerely hope that you continue in your participation here.
Thank you. Trustee Ingram, Foundation report?
Yes. The 31st Annual Some Enchanted Evening Scholarship Gala was held this past Saturday at the Overland Park Marriott. As Dr. Sopcich mentioned, the event was chaired by Clint and Britton Robinson, with John Stewart serving as the sponsorship chair. Mark Gilman was honored as the Johnson County End of the Year, and again, the event raised over $630,000 to support scholarships at JCCC. Our $25,000 plus legacy sponsors this year were BNSF Railway, the Clay Blair Family Foundation, Dr. David and Mary Zamorowski, Friends of Barton P. Cohen, Brad and Libby Bergman, J.E. Dunn, Mindy Campen Scholarship Fund, Kirk Foundation, Olathe Medical Center, Professor Brad Redburn, and the Rainier Family Foundation. We also had 2 sunflower sponsors at the $15,000 level, Midwest Trust FCI Advisors and Dick and Barbara Shull, and 3 $10,000 open petal sponsors, Black and Beach, Barton P. and Mary D. Cohen Charitable Foundation, Janet Alholm Interior Design Scholarship Endowment Fund. At the gala, Foundation President Mary Birch announced major gifts that have been raised for the Master Plan Initiative. These include a $2 million pledge from Hugh Libby, which launched the campaign, a $2 million pledge from David and Mary Zamorowski, and just last week, a $10 million challenge gift from the Sunderland Foundation, which will be leveraged for matching donations. The foundation would like to thank the JCCC trustees for their attendance and financial support of the gala through the foundation. Please mark your calendars for next year's gala, which is on Saturday, November the 10th, 2018. I would also like to just take a moment. We, at our last executive meeting, I want to include some information regarding the foundation that I don't think people often hear. The Executive Board of the Johnson County Community College Foundation acknowledges responsibility to prudently manage those funds under its stewardship. That portion of the foundation's funds, consisting of endowment accounts and charitable trust, is intended to have permanent life. That portion of the foundation's funds, consisting of non-endowed accounts, is entirely available for spending as intended to be managed with minimal risk. An approved investment policy is used to establish the investment goals of the foundation and to provide guidelines to govern the type, quality, diversification, and term of investment in order to realize these goals. The overall objectives for endowment or long-term assets shall be to generate cash sufficient to support the programs and purposes of Johnson County Community College as determined by annual distribution requirements outlined in the board-approved endowment spending policy, to grow the principal of the fund at a rate greater than inflation as measured by the Consumer Price Index in order to promote long-term growth of capital. The overall objectives for non-endowed short-term assets shall be preservation of capital, liquidity, and income. At our last executive board meeting, we had a report from the FCI advisors, and I would like to thank Kate and her staff for the complimentary report that was given. The thoroughness of the information that is provided to them, the recognition of the outstanding work that the foundation does was clearly evident to all of us who serve on that executive foundation board. So want to highlight that, Kate. Thank you very, very much. We've had an outstanding year, and that was such a nice compliment to hear on your behalf and your staff as well. So that concludes my report.
Kate, would you like to give a progress report on the November 10th, 2018 event? No? Maybe we'll say that. Okay. We're starting again. Thank you for all that you and your staff did. And Nancy, thank you for the report. Any other questions? If not, we're ready for the consent agenda. The board will consider the consent agenda. Includes a number of routine items and consensus items that are typically considered collectively and approved in a single motion and vote. Any member of the board may request that a particular item be pulled and debated and moved separately. Are there any items any board member would like to pull from the consent agenda and discuss or have considered separately? Trustee Cross.
The bulletproof vest item, could we pull that and discuss that?
Shall we just, sure.
Or I don't.
Let's just discuss it now, so unless
Apologize
you
if
find exactly where it is. No, that's fine, but, yeah.
I thought it
Ask
was
your
on-
question, we'll figure out who can answer it.
It's from the Justice Department, correct?
It's a grant.
Yes.
It's a grant that we received for
Apologize if I-
bulletproof vests in the $9,000 range,
Yes.
something like that.
And it'll replace 25 different bulletproof vests?
Yes, I mean, bulletproof vests are part of their uniform now, so it's simply replacing some of those, yes.
And there was no match from the county, so it was it's a good, something good for our officers, right, officers? David?
I move to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. That concludes, passes the consent agenda unanimously. Before we are going to have an executive session, but it's been brought to my attention that although she will officially be in office until January X, I'm not sure when the switch are, January 7th, Trustee Sharp is not going to be able to be at the December trustee meeting. So I think it's appropriate extemporaneously for us to thank her. How many years on the board?
8.
8 years on the board. I will simply start by acknowledging, I think she served on almost every committee. She has served as vice chair the last 2 years. She has been a solid voice for this college, not just within the walls of this room or on campus, but throughout the community. She has been a strong supporter of education, whether it's K-12 or higher education. In 8 years when it was not easy to do so, or maybe felt like it was not productive to do so around the state of Kansas. Stephanie, you will be missed on this board. Nobody has given any more than you have to this, and we know you're going to stick around. As we know, Henry, save our goodbyes to Henry for next month. But thank you very much for your service to this community. And we know that Paul can't fit in your shoes. David?
I didn't know that this was going to be Stephanie's last meeting, but I think suffice it to say, at least in my mind, one of the, and staff probably could attest to this far better than I could, but one of the best trustees that this college has ever had is Virginia Krebs, at least the most recognized and well-known. I think Trustee Sharp has been, at least in my view, Virginia Krebs reincarnate. So.
Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, people ask, why would you run for the board? Why would anybody run for the board? And I would hope that, and part of that answer of that question is, what skill set can I bring to the college as a trustee, understanding what a trustee does? And Stephanie, we came on the board together 8 years ago, and I've always been impressed with your political sense of what's going on in the state and within the county. I think you understand the issues very well. I think you understand trends and decisions that are made statewide that impact our college, and you've always had the best interest of the college in mind, in my opinion, when we deal with those state issues. So I want to thank you for bringing that skill set. That's a skill set absent of my understanding of what this skill set is, as I've known these trustees in that regard and our trustee-elects. I've been very impressed with your skill set on the political scene, so thank you very much.
I know that everybody, if we took time, we'd go around the room and have everybody say something. Dr. Sopcich, would you like to close
Sure.
this?
I think Virginia Krebs actually sat right there. So, so if I see any channeling going on, I remember Stephanie's billboard on I-35 that was kind of a gigantic billboard, fully illuminated, and I knew right then that Stephanie was going to set the pace and kind of redefine the way things are on the trustees. And so on behalf of the college, I want to thank you for your commitment. For one who had so much going on in your own life and all the activities that you do carry on throughout the state, it's amazing how you're able to manage that along with the commitment that you have to this college. So thank you very much for your involvement. You will be missed, and good luck in the days ahead.
We will be in touch. Now for an exciting motion to go into executive session pursuant to the Kansas, I'm looking for a motion pursuant to the Kansas Open Meetings Act exception relating to consultations with the board's bargaining representation and employer-employee negotiations. A motion to go into executive session for 45 minutes. We would like to invite Dr. Sopcich, Dr. Larson, Tanya Wilson, and Dr. McLeod to join this executive session. It would last 45 minutes. I think we will start at 5 till...
Becky Sentlever's on
And
it too.
Not on my list.
Yeah.
Hey, Becky Settlever would also be included in that motion. We would start at 5 till 7 and reconvene in this room at 7, no later than 7:40. No action will be taken during the executive session. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say yes.
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 Those no. Motion carried. We'll reconvene in executive session in 6 minutes. We have reconvened in regular session at 20 till 8 after our 45-minute executive session. No action was taken. We are now prepared for a motion to adjourn. Do I hear of such a motion?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. We are adjourned.